Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday, January 13th edition of the Island Stat Sports Show. I'm your host, Earl Bass, and I'm joined by co-host Jason Juglin J. And we are joined by the Minister of Sports, Dr. Peets, the Permanent Secretary for the department, Ms. Etride Sterling, and Maceo Dill from the Department of Youth and Sport. We're going to be discussing the return to sport COVID document. I think it's important that we do discuss this, as it would give not just the administrators of sport, but also the public, the wider public, an understanding of what's to take place when sports does return. So it helps everyone, players, fans, parents, and all understand what needs to be done. But first of all, I want to say thank you very much for joining us. Happy New Year to you all. Minister Peets, obviously this document comes at a time where there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of people wanting to get back to some form of normalcy, and basically sports is one of those things that people have been sitting on the sideline for quite some time since this latest lockdown of sorts of taking sports away. What can you say as in the very near future for sports in general?
Hey, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really, really glad to spend a few minutes with you tonight. To all of your fan base out there, Happy New Year. What I can probably suggest to you guys tonight, of course, we have a extreme responsibility as a country and as individuals and as a government, of course, to balance the necessary things we need to do to keep people safe, but also understand, hey, listen, you know what, we're also a sporting nation as well. So our top priority, of course, is keeping people safe. And I think if we do a good job in doing that, the resumption of sports, of course, will happen in due season.
Yeah. We spend a lot of time, obviously, trying to get documentation from several places to put together a safe return to sports. I know globally, many national sports governing bodies kind of wrote out a lot of paperwork or ideas on how to return to sports, which obviously our national sports governing bodies in Bermuda basically had to scale down to what Bermuda terms would be. And then obviously the department comes up with a return to sports policy guideline through working with, I guess, the health department, national security and all. But looking at it, how this document, and it's been revised, as I was talking with Maceo earlier, it has been revised. How does this document actually play out once we do get into certain stages, because it's not phases anymore, it's stages?
I wasn't sure which person you were actually directing the question to.
Any one of the three, because it's an open question kind of thing.
Okay. Well, certainly.
If you like, Minister, I can.
Go ahead, please.
Sure. I mean, the thought process of the document is that each sporting body and each sporting club facilitate our operational plan and how they fit into each stage of it. So us as a department, us as a government will look at it and basically approve their return to play policy, and then the government will be advising as which stages we're in, and they would know which stage they actually fit into. So that's the idea of the document, how the document's going to be used.
Yeah. Where do some of the ideas come from in our document? Maceo, you was part of that group that put it together, so that's kind of...
Definitely comes from working with the health department and the national security. So the Regional Health Department and National Security, these ideas. And there's also been understanding what has been best practice outside of Bermuda.
And I can add to that, because the public health guidance basically is founded on the principle of trying to minimize the group size and trying to minimize the contact. right? And the size of the group that actually has contact with each other. That's why the concept of stages that the group developed is so helpful, so that people know what they can do and a stepped process, right? So right now we have local transmission, so it's not a good time for people to be whipping their mask and hugging each other at all. But people can do some form of training as stage 1 allows, and very soon stage 2. And so it's a progression as COVID gets controlled. That's the logic from the public health perspective.
Yeah, we know there's various ways to contract this virus and so forth. We have been looking at other ways to control it. We had a return to sports, which we did with cricket in the summer, and then obviously football and other various sports. Some sports never really got off the ground. Was that because they could not meet the requirements, or they just felt they needed extra time to kind of make sure that they had everything in place?
Macy, do you want to speak to that? Because I think you probably have the most background on that.
Yeah, most definitely. It's both things. From the document, we can potentially jump from stage 1 to stage 4 if the cases go down. So now in the future, everybody will be able to know, okay, we can just say we're in stage 3. We don't understand how long COVID's going to be around. So now each sport has a clear guideline as to preparing a plan to see which stage they fit in based on where we are. Now, your question as it relates to sports, some sports not getting back up and running, each sport and governing body controls their own destiny in preparing how they get back up and running. And you're quite correctly, some sports felt that it was best not to get back up and running because of the limitations with it, because there are financial pieces involved in facilitating sports. Now, what is recognized by the government is the important role that sports is playing in our society as it relates to people's well-being, health, their mental health and their physical health. So it was important for us to put together something to guide them safely back into operation.
Mm-hmm. And of course, Dr. Peach, I wouldn't want you to speak out of school, but inside the cabinet, how are the ministers and the government working together collectively to try and ensure that we do return to some normalcy? We had schools go back in today. That's kind of a norm for the kids to get back to, although they still have their strict requirements that they have to do in school. So is this the start?
Well, of course, the cabinet, of course, is certainly guided by best practices. We rely heavily on data, so numbers and science is really, really important to us. I think we're also very, very diligent as it relates to making sure we're staying on top of all the information. Of course, you can imagine how complicated things can get. There are multiple moving pieces. There are different types of issues and demands. And sometimes it could get really, really, really difficult trying to manage all of those things. So paying attention to what the science says, what the numbers are saying, are really, really helpful in helping us make reasonable decisions that we can defend. Because the last thing we really want to do is to be emotionally driven by something we really want to do, and then only to find out later that we've created a super spreading event. So those types of situations are a primary concern as relates to trying to avoid.
Jake?
Yeah, guys. Good evening, guys. Question for you guys. Obviously, this pandemic has been what everybody's learning on the trot. And see the goalposts being moved when it comes to the protocols. Obviously, early in the year, the protocols are a lot tighter when it comes to group size. When we first got locked down, now we're being allowed a little bit more leeway, even though we're on lockdown. So I sort of assume that it's going to probably move again as we get more information. Like you said, it's based off of data, based off of science. But to get a little bit clarification for our listeners, I was looking at, take for instance, the last month or so since we've been back on lockdown, obviously we had a spike. We had a spike of not only just cases, but cases of unknown contact, which I think was that's the biggest thing, the unknown contact. When we have residents or visitors coming in the island and they test for COVID, they test positive, obviously they go under health monitoring. But it's the unknown contact that I think is the biggest problem that we have. Unfortunately, we never really get the exact numbers at the time. Like I looked at it today. The information today doesn't give you how many cases right now do we have unknown contact. It gives an overall basis of it. And I think I'm wondering if that's some of the major, that particular unknown contact, is that some of the major thing that's going towards how we come out of lockdown or how we start sports or how we get back up and running? Because
So,
go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. I thought your question was over, but go ahead and finish. I'll
Yeah,
say
because take for instance, obviously when we at first got locked down, obviously it was a number of cases, right? Obviously now we see how many cases we do have active. So it's a little bit different as far as the guidance. I'm just wondering now, is it the unknown contact that is really keeping us at bay?
So it's not only the unknown contact, although that you're right that is the most worrying category, right? What keeps us at bay is the extent to which we continue to find new cases in the community on a daily basis. Because even if an outbreak is contained, the mere fact that you're still finding positives is a concern, right? So the precise number of unknown contacts are recorded on the website, so you can go and see it, but it's always a historical number, right? It'll tell you the number as of today, as opposed to the number right now.
Exactly.
But the press release that is issued every day,
Mm-hmm.
that press release does tell you the number of unknown contacts as of today,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you can check it out there, but like I said, that is not the only factor. More telling from the perspective of government decisions is a scorecard that is on the coronavirus website. If you go to the main page, and there's the first box says updates, right? So you go there for your data, for your daily figures. If you scroll right to the bottom, there's a scorecard there with like four big circles that have different indicators that tell the country how we're doing with respect to COVID. And it looks at different components. One is how many positive cases we're finding, what is the transmission rate, what is the positivity rate, of all the tests we do, how many are positive. Because if we do 200 and we find 20 positive, that's a lot. But if we do 2,000 and if we find 20 positive, that's a lot less, right? So that information is there. We also look at how we're doing with respect to our preventive measures in terms of people wearing their masks, people washing their hands and physically distancing. And it tells us how we're doing in terms of preparedness, like whether we have enough PPE supplies, whether we have enough test supplies. And lastly, it looks at the hospitalization figures, which are always the last one because it takes a little while, right? Like right now, we're seeing the hospitalizations went up, and it's because of the outbreak that happened in December. But it takes a little while for people to get that sick and end up in the hospital, right? Or for the spread to occur and end up hitting the people who are actually more vulnerable. So those four components are actually the thing that drives the decision of the cabinet committee. That's some of the data that the minister was referring to, but it's posted on the public on the website for the public to view themselves, updated every week. So you can always be current on how we're doing. And if you go to the table now, I don't have it up right now, but I believe it has like one red box and 3 amber. Before the outbreak started, we had like 3 green and 1 amber. So
I'm glad you said when you get a large amount of people tested, PS. The fact that because Jason and I was doing this week by week, we were getting over 1,500 people tested and 5 were coming back. So So not throwing out a particular number, percentage-wise, what do we need to get to in order to return to normal? Because like Maceo said,
Normal. You mean like normal, like life before
activities.
COVID?
I mean, yes, we'll wear masks and so forth, but as
Okay.
Maceo said, we don't know how long COVID's going to be around. So what is the percentage of cases that we need to kind of get back to some normalcy?
Okay, and that's why those 4 boxes are so important, right? Because there isn't one number that matters. We really have to focus on 4 different components of it. But we definitely want to have a very low positivity, right? So of all the tests that are being done, we want a very small proportion to be positive, and we want those positives to be coming from a very controlled place, like the travelers. If they're travelers with their first day, there's kind of easy to contain. When you start to see community or local transmission cases in the community, and as Jason was saying, worse if it's unknown source, that's what makes it bad. But the other thing to weigh up is, for example, how is the hospital doing, right? Because if we're having very few cases, but the hospital has a lot of cases that are in ICU, then you probably don't want to relax your measures because you can't afford to overwhelm the hospital. So you really have to kind of look at those 4 components together. But we're trending in a really good way, and the although dates cannot be given as a general, because you don't know, you kind of assess the situation on an ongoing basis. But the general principle from the public health perspective is that you want at least 2 incubation periods to pass before you relax the measures, because you want to know that within the first 14, an incubation period is 14 days, right? So within the first 14 days, any transmission that might have occurred on day 14, you want to give it another 14 days to pass, right? So that's why if we're looking at, as the Premier said, perhaps relaxing the measures next week, dropping the groups of 10 restriction, opening up some more businesses, and moving to stage 2 of the guidance, perhaps next week, if all things are good, unless there's another outbreak, then we would probably be looking at 4 weeks at least before we were looking at relaxing things further.
Okay. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to get right into the COVID return to sports document. We'll be right back.
Sure.
Perrier water has been renowned worldwide for over a century and a half. Collected from a pristine ancient mineral water spring in the south of France, originally bottled in a distinctive green pear-shaped bottle, and distributed in Bermuda by John Barry & Son Limited, our foremost beverage distributor, refreshing Perrier is the champagne of mineral waters. Try Perrier water in bold, natural fruit flavors with no added sugar and 0 calories. This month, we're featuring peach, strawberry, watermelon, orange, pink grapefruit, lime, cucumber, and regular Perrier water in cans. Lindos, why go anyplace else?
And welcome back. Maceo, you have indicated to me that we now have a sports return to play guideline document that is out. It has been amended somewhat from last week when Jason and I spoke about it. And it is in stages. So stage 1, non-competitive training for exercise and technical development, maximum of 10 persons allowed, which include coaches or instructor. No contact during exercise or technical development activities. New group of 10 persons should arrive at least 30 minutes to follow for cleaning of equipment after existing group has vacated. 6 feet apart, participants should be observed at all times, wearing of mask required except during physical exertion. That's the stage that we find ourselves in now, Maceo, yes?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so with this stage, how do we how have in your conversations with national sports governing bodies, how have they managed this period?
Well, they've been happy that they have a guideline as to, how they operate. And they've been very cooperative too, because they understand this is a moving goalpost. So this gives them an idea as to what is appropriate during each stage. So they've been very, very cooperative during this stage.
Yeah.
And obviously, I would add to it, we're talking about all sports, so it becomes a little different for different sports as they operate differently. It's been more challenging for team sports because obviously team sports have if we're talking about football, potentially a team is 20 people, but what it does give them an opportunity to return to some type of development, whereas tennis would fit into this a bit differently because it's a 1v1 sport.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, if I can add, Maceo, these guidance are really, really important. So we're certainly asking our national sporting bodies, all the way down to the coaches who are involved, to do their level best to stay within those guidelines. I would imagine some of these guidelines will be a little difficult depending on the age group. Like, for example, if you've got a football team and you've got a couple of peewees or under sevens, you're still going to have to maintain 6 feet. So it's really important for the coaches and on parents to understand that, these guidelines are in place. This is a nice little roadmap that we can follow. Please do your very, very best to follow the guidelines as best as possible. So I'll be watching this week as I'm driving across on the various fields of play, just to take a little peek and take a look to see how some of our clubs and some of our sporting bodies are making out with the guidelines. So I know it'll be difficult, particularly for some of the young kids, but it still can be done.
I'm glad we said we talk about that because, we get messages all the time, and there are more than 10 kids in a classroom. So we're restricting a training, but we're having kids lunchtime, recess, in class, and so forth. I know in class you can control it because you space the desks out, but telling a 8-year-old not to go run over to a friend of his, or even in his class, contact is something that is kid-like. How does that measure out?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yes.
Oh no, sorry, Minister. If you want to go ahead, if you want to lead, go ahead.
Yeah, sure, and I'll certainly allow you opportunity to give us some feedback as well. We can say, first of all, Department of Education, the department, the administrators, the teachers, the parents of the kids have done an extremely stellar job over the course of almost a year now with the coronavirus. We're happy to say that things that we've put in place for the schools have not led to any of the schools being shut down because of coronavirus. Other things have taken place for schools to close, but not because of public transmission at schools. One of the things we're concerned about as it relates to when we've got these events that have created super spreading events is they happen not at schools, they happen at regular functions outside. So we have to take that into consideration.
Yeah. And what I would add to what the Minister said is that because we are with restrictions right now, right? Emergency powers are in place, so life is not completely normal for everybody. The things that get relaxed are based on need, right? On essentials. If you recall, when we had the complete lockdown, supermarkets never closed,
Right.
pharmacies never closed. The hospital didn't close, right? We had to have a very heavy-handed lockdown because we did not have a handle on it, and we didn't have all the testing we needed at the time. The situation is different now, but because of the outbreaks in December, that there had to be restrictions, they impact the majority of settings. But you have to make exceptions for settings where certain things have to continue to happen, right? Education of children is vital. If children are not in school, a lot of parents cannot go to work. Children are losing out educationally. With home learning, it's not the same for everybody. I know the schools do their best. So it's a matter of need, right? And with sport and sporting activities, of course, that is in the next level of hierarchy. You know, going to parties and bars, that's definitely at the bottom of the list of needs. But participating in sport, it's certainly in the next layer of essential activities. And that's why the phased guidance is so helpful to kind of to help sport return to play in a careful and responsible way.
Yeah. Jay, you want to jump in?
How important for the ministry and also all the stakeholders actually to come across, because I think, Earl, we brought this up in our last show, having a comprehensive understanding of information being disseminated through the press, having that constant message, not to nitpick at a lot of things, but when I look at this, these guidelines, I remember when we first opened back up, temperature checks for every venue or every, and I don't see this in these new this document. Not to say that obviously we should think that we should have temperature checks, but to have that that consistent message in the media, because you would have parents come and say, well, where's the temperature checks? Or there's temperature checks here, there's no temperature checks there. And it becomes hard for the organizers or the sporting organizations who's trying to control the fans when they come back, because you've got different messaging.
Yeah, of course, that is confusing. And the coronavirus has been such a moving target, right? So if the evolving guidance is confusing for the professionals, for the lay public even more. So I totally understand. In fact, the return to play guidance there's a much longer web page with a lot more guidance that cuts across all of the stages, in addition to just the PDF guidance with the specific stages. And there are times when temperature checks would be necessary, right? They're not necessary across the board. The need for temperature checks is really dependent by the extent of close contact that you're going to have within a setting, and the extent of risk that would exist within a setting. So if you're going into a healthcare facility, they're going to take your temperature because they see sick people, right? And they have to take their mask off to have a consultation. So you want to make really sure that nobody is exhibiting symptoms. The guidance for churches still has temperature checks because there's a lot of elderly people who attend church, and you just can't afford to take that risk, right? But when you go to the supermarket, you rarely have that kind of like close contact, within 6 feet, longer than 15 minutes. And you certainly don't see people without their masks off. So you don't need to have a temperature check. So that is why, because it's quite a nuanced thing. But the guidance that's on the website does actually give clarification on that. So as soon as we get into kind of competitive training, the phase 3 and return to play, we will probably start to see the return to the use of temperature checks, because that there's going to be a lot of close contact. Right now, there isn't any close contact, so we can go without it, and it's outdoors.
Yeah. We're going to quickly take another commercial break, and when we come back, we'll continue with the new stages of the COVID Return to Sports document. We'll be right back.
This month, we're featuring a range of infant and baby care products from Hello Bello, a company started up by a husband and wife team who were inspired to meet the challenges arising from the often surprising, not to mention messy, experiences that came with the territory known as parenting. The couple behind Hello Bello know that being a parent is uniquely demanding, and their mission is to bring you premium products at gentle prices. Try Hello Bello Apple Blossom Baby Lotion, Lavender Shampoo and Body Wash, Flushable Wipes, Diaper Rash Cream, Lavender Bubble Bath, and more. Lindo's. Why go anyplace else?
And welcome back. We're going to go
into add to Jason's question really quickly. In that particular document, if you scroll down to the procedural guidelines, the first part of it is said this is a guideline, but all current applicable COVID-19 laws shall apply. So the laws are temperature checks and all that. So it doesn't supersede all those things. This is meant to just isolate sports and how sports is going to operate.
Okay. All right. Let's move to the next stage, and that is team training. Return to team training will be guided by Health Department's assessment on the active COVID-19 cases in Bermuda and what is deemed the appropriate numbers that can participate. No contact during exercise or technical development activities. 6 feet between participants should be observed at all times. Wearing of masks required except when doing an activity. New groups should arrive at least 30 minutes to allow for cleaning of equipment after existing groups have vacated. Now, Maceo, or actually, Minister, the last time I spoke to you, you said you have coaching in your pocket.
I try.
I got to give him a certificate, man.
I'm still waiting.
For his certificate, but I got to get that sorted out.
So when we talk about one sec, I know PS, you had stated earlier that you had to leave. I want to thank you for your time. Any parting words?
No, thank you very much for the invitation. I know that Maceo and the minister have the face guidance in the back of their hands, so they will be able to talk you through that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and good night.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, PS.
Minister, that the second one, I'll put it back up so you can. I know you know it, but it's just so that others can see it. When we talk about having the no contact during exercise, you are a person that's been around a sport like football, or even hypothetically basketball, or there are some sports that have contact.
Yes.
Is this document or this stage saying that those sports can't really have contact in training at any time?
Right. So the no contact literally means no contact. So the difference from stage 1 and stage 2 is really about the number of people that are showing up for training. So I've already been in contact with the assistant coach this week, about our thoughts about how we're going to set up the training session for tomorrow, for example. The kids, once they get there, they're going to want to grab that football and just rush out on the pitch and start playing with each other. They haven't seen each other since December, but that environment is going to have to be controlled. So the first thing that we did, of course, is made sure the parents understand what the guidelines are so they can help us manage the children's expectations. Upon arrival, we want to reiterate what the training session is going to look like. So that means we're going to have to get there early and literally set up the field and set up the training pitch. If we don't do that, it will be very, very easy to sort of lose control of what's going to happen for the next 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. So these guidelines are really encouraging whatever sport you're involved in to start thinking creatively about how you're going to reimagine what your training session is going to look like. Because if we all do that, and if we do well with it, we can begin to progress through these stages, because everyone wants to get back to where fans are back and we're actually enjoying the sport that we love so much.
Does temperature check at training change that policy?
No, it doesn't.
Stage 2.
The temperature checks do not change stage 2. So we'll stay in stage 2 based on what the subcommittee for the coronavirus indicate to us regarding the national situation of coronavirus on the island.
Okay. Jay, any thoughts?
And not on this topic. I'll let you guys go.
Okay. All right.
Right.
So
So
we're gonna
you, yeah. So you're still going to see hand sanitizing, contact tracing. Oh, by the way, I really want to put a plug in there for the We Health app. You know, one of the things that Jason had mentioned earlier is what happens when we do contact tracing and, you know, the source is actually unknown. One of the reasons why the source is unknown is that we as humans, if you ask me where have I been for the last 5 days and how many people I saw, I'm going to do my best to tell you, but I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be 100% correct.
Mhm.
But you know what never forgets where I've been and how long I've been? My phone.
Yeah, the device.
So the We Health app actually augments and assists with providing the information precisely about where I've been, how long I've been there, and perhaps who else has been around. So I certainly would encourage us to use the We Health app.
Can I just add something to that, Minister? I just want to just let people know this app is being used via the Bluetooth. So your
Yes.
Bluetooth has to be activated. If your Bluetooth is not activated,
Yes.
then the app will not get the information that it needs to for us, really. So
That is
when you
correct.
download this app, you have to activate the Bluetooth
Yes.
for the app to work.
Yeah. If you turn your Bluetooth off in about 10 minutes, the app will give you a notification saying, hey, listen, your Bluetooth is off. You still have a choice to make whether or not you're going to turn your Bluetooth back on. But if you want the app to work properly, it can only work properly if the Bluetooth is working. So if you're not going to turn your Bluetooth on, you might as well not use the app.
It throws in that, where you being tonight? Let me check your phone. So let's move to stage stage 3. In stage 3 is competitive training to prepare for competition.
Mhm.
Full competitive training will be guided by the health department's assessment on the downward number of active COVID-19 cases in Bermuda. Sporting training activities and persons will be able to participate as normal to prepare for competition. No competitive competitions allowed versus other teams, clubs, or groups. New groups shall arrive at least 30 minutes to allow for cleaning of equipment after existing groups to avoid large gatherings. The maximum number allowed at a venue will be guided by the health department's assessment of the existing state of Bermuda as it relates to the spread of COVID-19. Maceo, we've been through this part some time ago, especially when we returned with cricket and so forth. How does this kind of marry up? And we all know, and realistically, we all know there are a lot of people sitting on the sidelines saying, gosh, I can't see any competitive sport until February. And we're talking the end of February. How does this marry up?
Well, in stage 3 again, you see the difference. You're getting to competition now, so it's almost like a preseason, right? You know, in a preseason, you know, you're training to get fit and to keep fit, and now stage 3, you're getting competitive. What we wanted to make sure that we done is keep sporting bodies in their own bubble. You know, so no competitive training or practice matches against other teams. You know, because again, we want to keep everybody in the isolated bubble as we contain the virus and move. You know, being comfortable moving to stage 4, where we can start to invite the public back into the sporting arena.
Inviting the public, and as we see in professional sports right now, a lot of them are going on without fans in the place. So are we going to wait until we allow fans in to any sport in order to start the sport, or can the sport, with using what they have, start, and then as the country progresses, because these are all questions people have, can we then move into that phase and allow fans in?
I think that's going to be part of a bigger conversation as it looks as we speak to getting fans up, and we're going to need to have conversations with the national sporting body, the health department, and things of that nature I mean, and as we see internationally, sports is being allowed without fans, so it can progress. Now in Bermuda, in our original piece of it, we was starting to allow fans until we went back into our lockdown. So there needs to be a bigger conversation of what that looks like. And we have some interesting things as it relates to let's talk about youth football. Potentially, allowing youth football to happen without fans, it can be a positive. It could be a positive because we know the conversation we're having about parents and the information that's being passed on. So it can end up being a positive. The same thing with I wouldn't say the same thing for senior football, because senior football, the fans are most valuable at that level. But that's going to be a part of a bigger conversation as to what is the best practice moving forward, for safety to allow things to keep to happen.
I would have thought it would have been in reverse because I know that the minister was chuckling a little bit because you have to deal with parents. But I thought it would have been a little different with the fact that you can have a youth football game and I can't go watch my son play, or I can't go watch my daughter play, as opposed to the senior side where I ain't gonna waste my time on that.
Yeah, well, what was going on just prior to December when we had that spike and things began to change, parents were still watching the games, but watching it from afar because all of the clubs and the pitches had to maintain a bubble. And that actually worked. So as a coach sitting on the sidelines, coaching the team, that was easier. The parents were still visible, but because they weren't that close to the field, it was easier for me as a coach to coach the team because I'm not competing with the moms and dads who are yelling instructions to the children.
Now, that's another good point that you bring up. But if mom and dad's bringing the kid to training,
Yes,
or to a game, let's do to a game, in their vehicle, the youngster gets out of the car, gets temperature checked, yes?
yes,
And then you create a bubble.
yes.
Yes. Is there a mechanism in place to have the parents do the same thing? They come through an entrance, because remember, if you have 11 kids on one team, that's 11 different places that kids are coming from to create your bubble from the same people that have dropped them off that you're now not allowing anywhere near the field.
I heard what you're saying. There are lots of moving pieces, and to put on a competitive game on any given Saturday or Sunday is a mammoth task for the officials as well as for the club. I think we're at our maximum capacity regarding resources, just creating the bubble for the players and the officials.
Yeah.
To add another bubble to manage as a club for the parents, I think is probably asking too much.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I think having the open discussion and you putting it like that kind of now puts people a little bit, okay, let me ease off of that, because you don't have the resources unless you have a bunch of people that says, you know what, I'll be that person. But how reliable are you?
Well, some of the positive things that I saw happening just prior to December before we had this spike is a lot of clubs becoming a lot more organized as how they set up their field. That's and it reminds me of Earl, that I've traveled extensively to a lot of academy, where when kids are playing, there is security. Like whenever I go to Fulham, it's a security guard there because it's kids. And we were starting to replicate that, what that actually looked like. When you go to, for instance, you go down to Bernard's Park, there's a parent there that's taking your temperature. There's a security guard there that's managing things. So it's like, okay, it was some positive things happening. But as we said, it takes resources, and it takes financial resources to make those things happen for clubs. So I also saw, for instance, we know a Rami at West Ham. At West Ham, they was allowing one parent to come. They were only allowing one parent of each player to come to to watch the game. So that was a way of managing it. But again, it comes down to resources in Bermuda as to, each club being able to facilitate that.
Yeah. All right. Let's
Hold
jump
on,
into.
hold on. I got something
Yeah.
for the minister. So we just talked about resources.
Yeah.
How is the government assisting sporting organizations to get back up and running when it comes to resources? As you said, some of this COVID stuff is coming with an extra extra bill. How is the government assisting some of these organizations?
Right. So, I mean, that's probably the $1 million question. There are two things I've learned since I've been sitting in the seat, and I haven't been sitting in this seat very long. The first is that the coronavirus has drastically affected our sporting bodies from an economic point of view as well. That's just talking about those sporting events that have revenue generating opportunities. But the additional piece that I didn't realize until I got a chance to talk to the national sporting bodies is that not only has there been a loss of revenue, because when you're not playing any games, you're not selling any tickets, and so on and so forth, that's revenue that's lost, is that the COVID restrictions and the guidelines in order to get back out on the pitch or back in the ring or whatever the case may be for your sport also requires additional expenditures. So you're not making as much money as relates to revenue, or none at all, but you also have to put some money out in order to even just get started to get people out to play sports. So we certainly understand that. The government, of course, at least this particular ministry, we're still committed to doing everything that we love to do for the sporting governing bodies. That's our mandate. That's my job. We're still restricted as it relates to how much money we can spend because we know the situation that we're in regarding the economy and whatnot. So it's certainly going to have to be a balancing act, to say the least.
I'll just get one suggestion. I mean, because obviously some of these sports are going to need PPE, especially for the administrators or people who is close contact with a lot of these athletes, or even what you were just talking about earlier, security. Helping out with somebody, for just a security person so the clubs don't have to take that on themselves, or the organization doesn't take that on themselves. I mean, just some of the options that could probably be thrown out there for the government to assist in.
Yeah, so we certainly stand ready to assist where we can and how we can. Of course, if we have unlimited money, this would be not a problem. So as I mentioned earlier, it's certainly going to have to be a balancing act. We certainly want to do more, but we're going to do what we can. So we're going to have to really work together with the sporting bodies to find a reasonable conclusion, or a reasonable solution, to make sure that we're getting back to sports. Nationally, we're doing a lot better regarding managing the coronavirus. And as the economy begins to open up, and that's the ultimate goal, I would imagine.
Okay. We'll be back after this commercial break.
We're spotlighting a food producer whose products are made with real wholesome ingredients, such as the highest grade farm-grown vegetables and certified organic free-range livestock with no artificial ingredients or preservatives, and no compromising on the painstaking quality control. Imagine Foods believe that higher quality ingredients, meeting high standards of purity, yield greater nutritional advantages and a more satisfying flavor. This month, we're featuring Imagine Foods organic roasted turkey, vegetable wild mushroom, and savory beef gravy. Lindo's, why anyplace else?
And welcome back. We're going to go into stage 4, return to play. All sports can compete and participate within the allowed COVID-19 restrictions per public health regulations and guidance. Maximum numbers allowed at venues will be guided by the advice of the health department. Any positive tests shall result in mandatory testing for all within the team group that are in the same sport bubble. The quarantine sport bubble must be reported to Maceo Dill, Sports Development Officer of the Department of Youth and Sport. Public health clearance will be required before any athlete or coach that has previously tested positive to be allowed back into sports. Teams, sports persons that participate in public sporting events shall, where possible, remain in their sports bubble and refrain from other large public gatherings. And venue management must submit a match day operation plan as to how they will manage the crowd. This plan should include the number of security that will be on duty and must be an approved ratio based on the size of the crowd that would be permitted to the event as per the public, guidelines. That's stage 4, and obviously we're only hearing we're going to go into stage 2. But Maceo, as we started at the top of the show, you said depending on which stage the government move in, we could jump to different stages. Is that what I heard you say?
Well, you would have heard the PS talked about that 14-day testing period and finding out where we are, what is active. So we could find that the cases drop dramatically, and if we find the cases drop dramatically, the government has the potential to make a decision as to what stage we are in as a country and opening back up. And then sports now has a guideline where it fits into that. Or we can find the opposite, that there's an upward spike and we might have to go back to stage 1 again. And as we said at the beginning of it, we don't know how long this is going to stay around. And we can find that with the vaccination that can change the dynamics of everything again too. So, we just wanted to be able to give the public some guidelines as to where it's operating, and in each stages.
Yeah. Minister, we know that there is vaccine on the island, just under just 9,000 was it? But the way it's administered, only 4,500 people can get the vaccine, as they have to have the second dose in 14 days. When do we see the possibility of getting the next shipment to increase that number?
Well, I can tell you that we're constantly working on supply. The entire world is trying to get their hands on the vaccines, and there are different vaccines that are coming out based on where they are regarding the phase of trials that they're in. So right now, one, our commitment to testing. We have a commitment to vaccinating. We are resourcing as much vaccines as we can muster. And right now, based on the Pfizer vaccine, as you have indicated, that vaccine requires 2 doses. So the 9,000 doses that you spoke about, effectively, that's enough for 4,500. But as you've heard in some of the press statements, we're trying to get to a point of herd immunity. That's the goal. So we're trying to vaccinate at least 2/3 of the country. Now, how long that's going to take, it's really up to the availability of how many vaccines we're able to secure. And of course, these vaccines are not free.
Well, that's true. Yeah, more money that we don't have.
Yeah. But there was a question that popped up on the screen earlier from one of your viewers about when is the league going to restart? Well, the competitive play starts in stage number 4. So all of the stages 1, 2, and 3, you're able to increase the number of individuals who are coming out to training and how that training is going to look like. Once you get to stage number 4, now we can start playing against other teams. And that's what stage 4 is trying to address as relates to what the guidelines look like.
If I can add to that, what's important also in stage 4 is to maintain your sporting bubble. We're asking, the sporting people, because sports is so important to Bermuda, and we want to be able to continue to stay in a sporting bubble. So we know that our sporting people frequently visit the bars, the nightclubs, and things of that nature, and we're trying to prevent that during this time of COVID. If you see what's happening in in places like the professional rivals in the UK. I mean, they're a little bit more restrictive in that sporting people not even want to participate with their families. And you see Mo Salah got in a bit of pickle because he went to his brother's wedding. Now we're not that extreme, but we want to be able to limit their interaction in public gatherings to make sure that we're working just in a sports bubble, so we can track and trace anything that's happening within that bubble.
But I think that goes for society. You have people that work in offices that tend to go to a bar or a restaurant after work. We're talking the same thing. But it would appear on the surface that sports is being penalized because it's played at establishments that have bars.
I wouldn't look at it from the perspective of the penalization of it. I will look at it from the perspective of sports being a priority that we wanted to continue. That's the perspective I'm looking at it from. During this time, let's stay in our sports bubble so that we get priority when it comes to decision making, from government that we're doing things that are safe, to continue to operate.
Jay, any final question?
Yeah. So I want to say the stage 4 was stage 4.
Yeah.
Can you post the first part again? I just
Sure.
want to double check. I don't want to speak out of turn. Okay. It might have been stage 3. So let me go back. So Meso, and I listened to Meso and also the minister, and talking about the downward number. No, we're talking about the safety of our citizens, safety of our athletes. And just now I'm hearing the word bubble, especially when we're talking about international games. When you mentioned Mo Salah, we're seeing it with the NBA, the NFL, we're seeing all of them. One thing that comes into mind, via creating that bubble, is people being tested into the bubble. Where we're not testing going into a bubble. We're making a bubble as people are coming there, but we're not testing going into a bubble. So we can have people coming to our, even just training, who could be positive, asymptomatic. That can lead to an outbreak because not just, it has up until a certain amount of hours that the virus could sit on something live without a host.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering if we're really talking about creating a bubble, should we talk about testing prior to getting into a so-called bubble? Because that's how those other organizations are starting to see the success. Because if people do break protocol, they have to go through a whole testing regime to actually re-enter the bubble.
Well, you're certainly right. I mean, I think you're having the right conversation and you're thinking about the right things. One of the things I can share with your listening audience is, we as a country have put an extreme emphasis on testing. So right now, our testing capacity is a lot higher than a lot of our neighbors in comparison to our population. So right now, if you're looking to get tested, you can get tested. That may not be true in other jurisdictions. So I'm encouraging anyone who's listening, if you have any concerns about possible exposure, there is an opportunity for you to go ahead and get tested. When you take a look at the stage 4, it certainly indicates that if anyone on the team tests positive, by mutual agreement in getting into stage 4, the entire team is going to have to be tested, because we understand that a team like this in stage number 4, with 22 people, 24 people on the pitch, if we're talking about football, that could easily mushroom into a super spreading event. So we're certainly encouraging individuals, if you would like to get tested, go ahead and get tested. But this document, of course, based on the subcommittee each week as they're getting more information, things like this could change and potentially could be added.
All right. Minister, any closing remarks?
We're actually at the end of the show already?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Time flies when you're having fun, eh?
I certainly guess so. I certainly guess so. Well, I guess in closing, I certainly want to reiterate our commitment to national sporting bodies. Everything that the NSGBs do aligns with my personal views. I want to thank all the coaches out there and whatever sport that you are coaching in for your contribution to helping us get to this point. And to Island Stats, you guys are amazing. And thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you. Maceo, any parting words?
Again, just thank you for the work that you're doing. I mean, I think we all want to see sports back up and running. We all have a biasness as to wanting sports to operate, and we just have to look at the best practice of delivering it. And I want to say, as you mentioned earlier, the document that you're reading from is a revised document from the one that you originally received. So this is an ever-evolving process, as we sort of negotiate our way through this pandemic.
Okay.
Then thank you again for the invite.
Brother Jay?
I just want to thank the minister and also Meso from the Department of Youth and Sport. Obviously, we just want a clarification from the guidelines we saw last week, and obviously we got to be in realistic terms. The goalposts will keep moving, and we hope we invite you guys back to give us the updates so we can share with our audience as far as the Ministry of Health, and obviously the Ministry of Sport. But just keep our listenership abreast of the new information, because it's going to change. Science is changing, the data is changing, and then the new caveat now with the vaccines when it does become available for younger persons.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you guys for appearing. We're going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, Jason and I will wrap up this edition of the Island Stats Sports Show. We'll be right back.
Thank you, Al.
Go Macro started up at the beginning of the millennium in Wisconsin in the U.S. with macrobiotic farming in mind, motivated by the pursuit of health through balanced nutrition. Go Macro is a family-owned company dedicated to living and promoting a natural, whole food-based lifestyle. Like most whole food businesses, Go Macro is also dedicated to bringing you the flavors they love. This month, we're featuring Go Macro Vegan Organic Granola and Coconut, Sunflower Seed Butter and Chocolate, and Coconut Almond Butter Chocolate Chip Macro Bars. Lindos, why go anyplace else?
Well, welcome back. We've spent considerable amount of time on that document, and I believe this is the part where the PS was talking about with the graphics showing what is the current confirmed cases and so forth. So, Jay, I do want to do our regular overseas report, because I did have Vernon A. Springer send me a report. So let's get Vernon A. Springer, and then when we come back, we'll wrap up what we've heard from the Minister, the Permanent Secretary, and Maceo from the Department of Youth and Sport. Okay?
Cool.
We'll be back.
Good day, Earl. How are you? Welcome to Island Stats from St. John's, Antigua. This is Vernon Springer from Vast Sports Media. Let me just wish all of your viewers and listeners online all of the best for 2021, and that we continue to make sure that we get involved in some sort of sporting activity, whether it is walking, hiking, biking, swimming, you name it. In terms of sports taking off in the rest of the region, I think 2020 was a tough year for sports administrators. And I think a conversation maybe needs to take place with a number of the Caribbean countries and their small national associations who don't receive support from National Olympic committees, along with governments who I'm sure will cut their sports budget in terms of preparation for the budgets for 2021. On the field of sports, you would know that Cricket West Indies Women's Camp is started in Antigua and Barbuda, High Performance Camp, which is going to be spearheaded by Courtney Wall, today's assistant being Robert Samuels, and Cricket West Indies performance manager in Graham West. You also have the Leeward Island Hurricanes. They're also in Antigua and Barbuda under the supervision of head coach Stuart Williams and assistant coach Wilden Cornwall, and they'll be getting prepared for the Cricket West Indies Super 50 tournament, which will take place from the 7th to the 27th of February in Antigua Barbuda, with two venues being used: the Coolidge Grounds for the what we'd say the broadcast games, and the Sir Vivian Richards Stadium. Also, matches will be played there. You would know that right after that, Cricket West Indies in Antigua and Barbuda will be hosting Sri Lanka for 3 one-day internationals. So there's lots of cricket activity taking place. The Antigua and Barbuda Cricket Association, they've also started their 40-over competition in Anguilla. There's a T20 tournament which is going to be rolled out. Nevis is just concluding their T20 tournament, which has been running for some time, and St. Kitts is expected to maybe have some activity taking place in terms of cricket. So on a wide whole, the government of Trinidad and Tobago has not given approval to the Trinidad and Tobago Cricket Board yet because of the cases. They wanted to organize a competition in Trinidad and Tobago, so they haven't got the green light concerning that as yet. In terms of the football administration and the politics, yes, Everton Bata Gonzalez will be challenged by one of his executive members for the election, but I'll wait until when I get proper confirmation. What is just actually happening is that you just have candidates just maybe switching on the media houses. So when I get proper confirmation, I'll be able to just let you know in terms of what is going to be happening up. Also, to be aware for the fans around the region, you would know that the Islands Cup Open Football Championship of Professional League is expected to kick off in 2021. So you got some more details that will be coming your way concerning that. But all in all, I think everybody is just gearing up now and just looking now to see what is going to happen on the political side in terms of the United States of America, with Joe Biden being sworn in as the next president of the United States. And also, good news that the Los Angeles Lakers, providing that everything works out, will be going back to the White House. So sports playing a dominant part in terms of Joe Biden being inaugurated along with Kamala Harris. So the world is in a wait. You would know that, you know, the English Premier League is also being hampered. The NBA making some drastic changes concerning the COVID release. It is a serious challenge, even just for the testing period for the folks here in Antigua and Barbuda. The Leeward Islands Hurricane, they're in a bubble. And so, you know, that is going to be pretty expensive. The West Indies women team, they're also in a more secured bubble. So, you know, it's really tough times. But all in all, sport is back, and we just hope that everything will work out okay. This is Vernon Springer for Vast Sports Media, reporting for Island Stats in Bermuda.
Well, we want to thank Vernon for his global look at sports, because obviously he covers a wide gamut from Antigua. So we want to thank Vernon and wish him Happy New Year. But Jay, all in all, what you heard over the past hour and a bit, what's your thoughts?
I would hate to be the minister right now. That's right. I mean, hey, that's what you signed up for, buddy. No, I mean, you got to lead from the front, and these are the things that, you know, it's nobody has the correct answer, you know. So for us, it's just to keep them accounted for, you know, and keep asking the questions. The finances, we even heard Vernon Springer talk about the finances, you know, and obviously, you know, how important is sport? You know, and these are the questions we have to keep asking the government. If you're saying where you want to use this to, you know, help get our country back together, mentally and physically, but how important is it then? What you know, he really couldn't give us anything definite, you know, but what other things are you going to be helping out with? As we know, Earl, with this break, especially in football season, right, just take trace of this break or this break in any sport, there might be an extension now of the sporting season. For that, well, that might push back the next sport that's coming, who wants to start a season. The break that they would normally have, they're not going to have. It's not going to be as long because, take for instance, football, just to help out the viewer the question, based off of the graphs that we've seen on the website, I'm thinking probably it's going to be at least 6 weeks before you probably get any type of answer from the government regarding resume to play as the many numbers that we need. At least 6, and I mean 6 weeks for the assessment
Mm.
And then they probably tell us when. So even saying that, you're not talking about football probably starting back up until after Valentine's Day. Now the season normally ends. Well, the league would normally end around the end of March. They normally have the cup games in April. Are we going to do away with the cup games and let the league end probably in middle April? You know, it's always a short window between that and cricket. Will cricket start on time? Will cricket before it's back? If cricket ends, if before it's back, will they end in September? Will they end in October? You know, all these, and that overlaps as it is. So all these questions will have to be somehow answered for the stakeholders when it comes to government and these organizations. The other thing that came, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the most clarity will come as we move into stages, because right now, without knowing what stage we're going to be in, can we look at that document and say, okay, we can do this?
That's the frustrating part, because if you're administrative or you're organizer of these leagues or whatever, you have to plan ahead.
Mm-hmm.
You have to plan ahead. Unfortunately, you're not really be given solid numbers as guidelines.
Right.
One of those pieces in the document says a downward number, but we haven't heard of a downward number.
Well, today we had a downward number. We had 966 test results received, 3 were positive, and all 3 were imported.
But okay, so what is the goal? What is the goal where it becomes
Well,
that?
well, that's the one thing that he could not answer. And you have to understand that. I mean, we understand it, but that's why I didn't ask for a number. I asked for a percentage.
Yeah, but the document says.
Yeah, number. The document says number. See, because, like, okay, hypothetically, 966 today. What if we only had 1?
I'm really saying this because, like I said, if you're talking about, look at some of the sports who could not start out, right? If you're looking at the financial cost of starting the sport, you basically have to, even if it's 10 weeks, right? You basically have to build a budget, get a budget to see how much it's going to cost the organization for those 10 weeks, right? What is going to take place as far as having the COVID protocols instituted. Now, depending on the number, are we too close to that number? So you say, you know what, we're too close to the range of that number where it doesn't make sense, or where, you know what I'm saying? Because you still got a plan. You still have to plan. So these are conversations that will be ongoing conversations, and I would just ask the coaches, the organizers to keep a check on the government website. Go down to the bottom, you see the daily updates. Sometimes we see in the media just a broad statistics, but they do give you more detail.
Depending on what media you're talking about, basically they only want to tell you how many people have been positive, and that's what they harp on.
Yeah, it's crazy. The other thing that and I was smiling when I was listening to Mr. Springer. Man, this word bubble. Really bubble for some reason.
It's only a bubble in the professional world. You cannot have a bubble, and basically we explained it in some of our scenarios with the guests we had on today. I mean, I brought up the fact that if I'm taking my son to play football, who's 8 years old, he's been in the car with me, could be his cousin, could be a whole bunch of people, but then gets to this field and all of a sudden he can't come in contact with the same people that brought him because he's in a bubble.
But you know what? I gave you another example, which is it's what started today?
School.
Indoor, right?
Yep.
Most class sizes.
I'm more than 10. Yeah.
More than 10.
Well, I said that.
And they're not able to stay 6 feet apart.
Yeah. I mean, they've managed the best they can in separating the desk. But again, when you have those recesses and lunch times, you remember when you was 8 and 9?
No.
You get that ill? I remember.
Brain's a little foggy. But I forgot to ask, and we brought it up last week. I don't think it's much when the actual training session or the event's going on. For me, it's prior
and after.
and after.
Yeah.
So hopefully,
I mean, this conversation that we're having today will go on and on and on for quite some time because, like you said during the show, the goalposts will always keep moving. It's a matter of, we're learning as we go. So every day is a learning day, and again, it's moving because we don't know what is next for this pandemic.
I just hope we get rid of this word bubble, because the bubble in the professional sense comes with accountability.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is financial accountability when it comes on players and stuff like that.
Right.
I'll just give you another note. We have a good bit of ladies we've had on the show who are away in school and college who are here training with the national squad. I will guarantee you, Earl, when they're returning back to their school or their clubs, guess what they're going to need?
A negative test and go through a whole process before you can even enter
the bubble.
Yeah.
So that's just something that, like I said, how do we make up with a lack of resources? And once again, that question, how important it is. On another note, before we change, and I actually wanted to probably keep Macy on for this, but so I don't know if you kept up to date with the test match between India and Australia the other day.
You talking about Smitty?
Well, yes and no. Not so much Smitty. No, not really Smitty. Not really. Smitty was a good boy. Smitty was okay. His captain.
The captain was the one that started it all, but you saw what Smith. You saw what Steve done.
Yeah. But okay, so it's for the folks who don't know, and we've talked about this in many other shows. The word sledging.
Oh yeah.
Now, for the folks who want to know what sledging is, you hear it a lot of times when we talk about cricket. A lot of that time is just bantering in the middle of the game. Could be while you're batting, while you're fielding, players talking to each other in a negative way.
It gets personal.
It gets personal. And what to ask me is because we see in sports, and I've told you before, some people will crack, will freeze, will choke up, and some people it spurs them on.
Yeah.
And you got to know who to do it to.
Yeah.
I think the young Australian captain learned a vital lesson.
And he did. He made a statement after it saying, "I think I learned my lesson of who to talk to in the India team."
They were on the brink of beating India within 3 days, or the fourth day, I should say. And India needed to survive the fourth day and all of the fifth day. And they almost had a chance to actually go and win the game, even though they needed
4 or 5. They got
5.
355 for 5.
And if it wasn't for the injury that one of the batsmen had, hamstring. But I just had to laugh because Ashwin, the spin bowler, known for a spin bowler, and Ashwin was the batter, and he was, and it got picked up on the once again.
Stump Mike.
Again, we've heard people saying, why do we have stump mics here? Now you see, you'll come out and you'll get exposed. Now it's going to be interesting because what made it worse, he was sledging Ashwin, but he was having one of the worst games of his life.
Sometimes you want to drag people down with you.
He dropped 3 or 4 catches in the match. So,
docked the first inning in 39-second, right?
So the last, he was right. I can't wait to go to Gabba. Can do it to the last test, but it will be interesting to see. And I think, I believe the winner of the last test will be decide the series.
Yeah, because it's 1-1. But I honestly believe officials will speak to both teams, and you'll see some gentlemanly conduct.
Oh yeah, but I just wanted to say, be careful who you sledge.
Oh, definitely.
The moral of the story is be careful who you sledge to.
Definitely. Well, Jay, you've come to the end. Be careful who you sledge. Okay?
I'm looking.
You be out of your sledging. Have a good night, buddy.
Glory, glory.
Who?
Man United.
Oh, that team. Okay. Good night.